now recording.
I was ready for it because I listened to the first episode, but it's still upsetting to hear.
It's weird, isn't it?
Why is it called Craig?
I have no idea. I did a.
It's the robot revolution. They make themselves friendly to you so that they can take over and we feel vulnerable.
Hello, welcome to the Wretched Cast, the podcast where I talk about Wretched and Alone games with the people who have made them. I have a couple of guests with me today, and I'm going to let them introduce themselves. If you could tell everyone your name, what pronouns you use, and what you're all about. And we'll start at the top of my screen, so we'll start with Adam.
So I'm Adam Boyes, he, him, and you may also know me as Boyes RPG from things like Twitter and Itch.
Hi, I'm Spencer Campbell, also known as Gila RPGs. That's where you can find me on Itch, on Twitter. I design tabletop role-playing games during the night. My day job is as a psychologist, so it has been a wild last few months for both my psychology stuff and my game stuff going on right now. And the Wretched and Alone games alone, with how they get into psychology, has been like especially exciting to me. So I'm excited to talk about that today.
Oh, cool. We'll definitely get into that then, because that's something that I have no idea about. So we'll let you talk about that for sure. So where did I want to start? So I know that, Adam, you had never written any game, you had never done any game design stuff before you started playing with Wretched and Alone, right?
No. So, I mean, I've always dabbled with writing my own stuff just for my own personal use, or when I'm GMing for other people and friends. Always loved inventing scenarios and breaking and hacking rules, but never had the courage or the motivation really to actually publish anything. No, not until the Wretched came along.
So, I mean, you've published, 4 Wretched and Alone games now. You've done Adrift, you've done Spy School, Dead Drop, and Weaver, which you did with Spencer.
That's right. Yep. Yep.
I really want to talk about Weaver and Rigged and the Wretched and Not So Alone thing, because that's really cool what you two have done. But something I'm really interested in is how people discover new games. Because you both follow me on Twitter, you both know I'm on a big get people to play things that aren't Dungeons and Dragons kick, right? So could you could you maybe talk a little bit about kind of how you came across the Wretched and what it was about the system that made you want to kind of take the plunge and start designing stuff? Because I'm really curious about that.
Well, it was just a great coincidence, really. I mean, it's propelled me in a direction of meeting so many wonderful people and enjoying myself and having this creative outlet. But it was my brother. I don't know how he stumbled across you. I will have to contact him. But I think he followed your blog, Loot the Room. And he said, you really need to look at this, Adam, because he knew I enjoy role-playing games. And so followed the link and instantly, because I think it was just as COVID was starting. So I was thinking, what am I going to do to get my role-playing fix? Can't see my friends, can't go to my games club. This has fallen into my lap at just the perfect time. And I'm a massive sci-fi horror fan. Love the Alien. And things like The Thing. My vocabulary there is going out the window. The Thing, the Alien, things like The Thing. It just I instantly thought this is something I need to take a deeper look at. So purchased it and just dove straight in. And I ran a Twitch channel for quite a long time doing painting, so that's kind of my background of how I got into these kind of hobbies. I used to paint a lot of miniatures, do a lot of tabletop wargaming, and like a lot of people, I think, grew up on Warhammer, Games Workshop, and then kind of fell out with them and started branching out and looking into more independent games. So it's not a strange thing for people like my brother or other people to give this a go, Adam. Alex, I'll try most things. So I jumped straight into doing the YouTube video of my playthrough through it, and just fell over head over heels in love with it and thought I want to do something with this. It's just seems so accessible to being hacked. And I think I did reach out to you on Twitter and say, look, has anyone hacked this? Because I want to give it a go.
You did, yeah. You got in touch round about the same time that Matt and I were already putting together the SRD. You were the first person to release a game for it. You kind of day one, you dropped Adrift. I don't want to make this tell me how you found my game because it's so ego driven, but how did you come to it, Spencer? Like, I'm really curious about this.
That's a good question. I mean, somebody must have retweeted you on Twitter because I saw that beautiful artwork of the game on my feed, and I clicked on it, and I was never really interested in doing solo RPGs because I come from board games, and I never really got into solo board games very much.
Mm-hmm.
But it kind of like Adam had said, the COVID situation had just begun. I had lost the ability to see my regular game group, and so I was open to trying something new. And I mean, it speaks to the power of art, right? Like, I see a beautiful cover like that on your game, and I just want to know more about it. And I'm just I'm on the itch page, and I'm going, okay, you know what? You got to try this. You just have to try it. And so, yeah, I think it's just kind of that. I remember early on when I was doing stuff on Twitter, I remember seeing you talk a lot about the power of self-promotion and being okay with it. And I think this is just a demonstration of how that power of self-promo got your game in front of my eyes.
Oh, that's really cool. So the big thing that you two did that has kind of blown my mind a little bit was Wretched and Not So Alone, and kind of coming up with this rule set to let people play these games together. And I want to talk a little bit about the mechanics of that because the poker thing you've got going on is great. But how did that come about?
So I think
That was Adam's idea.
Yeah, I am again, browsing through the jam. I found Rigged, and I'm a big fan of Cyberpunk. I'm a big fan of all sorts of things, but Cyberpunk is one of my favorites. And when I read the premise for Rigged, bought that immediately. And I'd already had this idea of a hacker doing something in the Wretched universe. Quite a lonely task, isn't it? Hacking, or you imagine it is. So it seemed to fit the Wretched and Alone remit quite well. So I was toying with this idea, but then I saw Spencer's, and I thought, well, wouldn't it be interesting to have two hackers at the same time, or two cyberpunk things going on in the same universe, where potentially the stories are either parallel or they affect each other, or you can use the other person's game to influence what might be going on in yours. So I reached out to Spencer, and I think this is where our online friendship began, and he liked the idea, and we started coming up with, well, what if you could actually not only influence the direction that someone's story might go in just by what you're doing, but actually mess with them a little bit. And that could be directly, like we're doing with Rigged and Weaver. I'm sending hacks and things like that to him, and vice versa. Worms might be entering my system, but we played around with the idea, well, what if it's I talked to Spencer about that wonderful scene from Jason and the Argonauts. I don't know if you've seen the original, where the gods are playing a game of almost like chess with the lives of the mortals. And I just love that idea of being able to do that in the Wretched game system as well, is that you might not necessarily be sending something physical against them. It might be this outward power, omnipresent power somewhere that's just ruining your day.
I really like the because obviously you wrote Weaver as a kind of reaction to Rigged, right?
Yeah, yeah.
But you say in the rule set, and I don't know which one of you wrote the rules or if that's a collaborative thing, but you say that you could use them to play kind of any two Wretched and Alone games together, if you can kind of make it work fictionally. Have you? I know the two of you are in the middle of a playthrough of Rigged and Weaver at the minute, but have you played any other Wretched and Alone games together?
No,
We
not
haven't
yet.
played anything together, no. Though
Okay.
that would be very fun.
I think they're. I really want to play something completely opposite, because, like I said, it could be the elements. It could be just like take Adrift, for example. It could be just the gods or Poseidon or someone just. Are you not? Or just your paranoia that this is going so bad? Why am I experiencing a storm every day out on this raft? Someone is messing with me. Something's out to get me. And the reality is that there is, because there's someone in their office or their bedroom or their home somewhere rolling some dice and pulling some cards, and they are messing with your day. And
I think that's a really good way of thinking about it, that sense of paranoia, because these games are wretched and alone, right? You're alone for such a long time in this just dreadful situation. Your mind's going to play tricks on you. Like you're going to just imagine things, or going to almost like placebo effect. Things are just going to get worse because you expect them to get worse. And so the rules that Adam and I wrote then can reflect that experience, so that you can actually talk about it with a friend and be like, hey, how's your character falling apart right now?
How is everything going horribly wrong for you today?
Exactly. What disaster knocked on your door this morning?
Amazing.
and then and I guess, and what we've started to do, and we perhaps didn't plan this, but you start putting a name to that. So it's been fun to one of Spencer's first moves against me. He sent a pair of kings my way. So as a hacker, that's the worm that I found in my system. It was called the Two Kings, and then I slowly learned as the days went by that the person out to get me was Spencer, and we never planned for that to happen. It just kind of came out in the story.
So I think that's a really good kind of maybe a little segue to talk about the actual mechanics of Wretched Not So Alone, because I really, really like the way you've taken poker and turned it into mechanics to kind of mess with an RPG, right? Was that something that one of you just kind of had in mind, like this is something that you think could work, or did you come up with that together, or what's the genesis of that?
So I think it was my suggestion, Spencer.
Yeah.
I was a massive fan of. I don't know if you've heard of it. There was a tabletop war game called Malifaux, bit of a skirmish game. So rather than rolling dice, you very much had a poker hand, and you had to play cards against your opponent and vice versa. So I'd always had that in mind. I really wanted to make a game with a system like that. And with Wretched, you have this big discard pile that you draw these cards, and then apart from perhaps the ace and the kings, everything else is put away into this discard pile. So I thought, well, let's hold on to some of those cards and do something with them. So I fired that idea over to Spencer, and we took a look at the different hands that you can create in poker and what are the chances of those coming out, and it just seemed too good of an opportunity to miss, really.
When Adam mentioned that idea of holding onto cards and using them against each other, like just like lightning, we were going back and forth on Twitter, just like, well, what if you did this? What if you did this? What if you did this with the cards? And it was just like, it just came together. It was this flashbulb moment. Like he mentioned that, and it clicked in my brain, and it was very exciting to come up with then the punishments, or whatever you want to call them, the consequences for the various hands, poker hands.
I think one of the difficulties was, or certainly the different approaches I've taken to handling the tower. So in a lot of my games, you build the tower rather than take it apart. So making those prompts within Wretched and Not So Alone fit both those systems. But it's turned out quite well. I think, rather than pull, you maybe drop a block onto the tower.
So Spencer had mentioned earlier before we were recording that his tower is not looking particularly good in his play of Rigged at the minute. Oh,
Good.
It's a disaster.
So how are you finding that mechanic of building the tower as a player?
As a player, it's honestly very exciting for me, because when you play with a normal Jenga tower and you're pulling things, depending on how you approach Jenga, like you can kind of like probe at the pieces a little bit and find the easy ones and kind of make the turns not quite as stressful. But the fact that I'm building this thing and I have very little control over how I'm going to be building it, because you also roll to see how the block is oriented before you lay it down on the layer. I learned very early on some of the strategies in terms of how you layer things, because the base of my tower is in shoddy condition and it looks a little bit better now. But my Jenga tower right now looks unlike any Jenga tower that I've ever played when I'm just normally playing the game, because it looks skeletal and malformed. It's terrifying looking, and I'm really I'm feeling the dread, I think, even more so than I normally have in the few other Wretched and Alone games that I've played. So I think it's just it's brilliant.
That makes me so happy to hear.
So I remember when Adam, when you were writing Adrift, you'd asked me about the build. Well, you'd shown me some of Adrift, I think, and I saw that you were building the tower. How did you come up with that? Like, where did that idea come from?
I think it was just the idea of your yacht sinking and you just being surrounded by these planks. And I looked at the Jenga tower and I thought, it just didn't make sense that I had this pristine Jenga tower, but the game was about floating away on these planks that you'd managed to scramble together and save yourself. So and then I thought, well, what a fantastic way of visualizing this yacht. So I make the players build their tower and and say to them, look, this is your beautiful yacht. Look how pristine it is, how beautiful it is. Think about how proud you are that you've finally achieved this yacht. Oh no, what's that on the horizon? It's a storm. Now push your tower over and take some blocks and build your raft, and so the game begins. And I just it didn't make sense having a pristine tower and taking it apart. It just made sense pushing it over and building it up. So that's where it came from, really.
I remember when I saw that for the first time, just thinking, shit, that's amazing.
He captured that idea so well with Weaver too, because you're quite literally building your case. Like, it's not a physical thing that you're building, but you're literally building the case. That's the idea. So, like, thematically, the concept of building just makes so much sense, even when it's not a physical thing that's being built. Oh, I just love it.
I really love the opening of Weaver as well, when it's like, yeah, build the Jenga tower. Now push a block off the top of it. That's someone falling off the tower. Now push the tower over. I love it so much.
Thank you.
I really love when mechanics kind of enforce the theme or the narrative of the game, and I think you absolutely nailed it with both of those, actually.
But right back at you though. That's the power of the Wretched. It's just such a fantastic system to do that with. It's just simplistic, and I don't mean that in an offensive way. It's just it's a framework that you can. I would challenge nearly anyone to take a genre, take an idea, and you could probably build something really fun around it. I mean, I described it to my kids, and they were like, "Daddy, we want to build one. We want to," because they saw me having so much fun and coming downstairs, and I've come up with this idea, and I was talking to my wife, and the kids were overhearing this, and they, well, can we try it? And that's where Spy Kids came from, Spy School.
Yeah, because how many mini games are in Spy School? It's quite a lot, right?
There's 52. So for each card, your children can they have to complete a task, just like the Wretched, really, but in a more harmless fun race. So, but that I think that proves the point that how once you've got that framework. It took me and the kids and the wife and our next door neighbour's little girl a few hours to fill out 52 ideas of what you could do if you drew that card.
So, going back to the poker thing, one thing that reminded me of, I don't know if you can talk about this much at all or not, Spencer, but you're working on Gun and Slinger with Nevin Holmes, right?
Not working on it with him. I've just done some reading for him, and I'm a huge fan of it, but I'm actually not working on it.
Right.
He's writing for my game.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, do you want to talk about Slayers?
Sure. I can talk about Slayers real quick. Slayers is my game that's up on Kickstarter right now. / when you listen to this, is not on Kickstarter anymore. But it's a monster hunting game that I come, like I said from earlier, I come from board games, so I love asymmetry in games, and I find that in a lot of role-playing games, the fact that a wizard and a fighter do the literal exact same mechanic in combat is infuriating to me. So
I
like
saw
take
your
D&D.
thread on Twitter earlier today about that, actually. Was it today?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that was today. Like a wizard in D&D rolls a d20 and adds a modifier to cast a spell, and a fighter swinging a sword does the same thing, and that just feels wrong to me. So I made Slayers so that every class literally plays the game differently from the other classes, so that you get to feel like the fighter, you get to feel like the wizard, you get to feel like the gunslinger, so that it's heavily inspired by the game Root. I don't know if you've ever played the board game Root.
No.
I just love Root because everybody's playing on the same map with the same goal of getting points, but everybody gets points in a different way. Take that same concept in role-playing games. Everybody's fighting the monster, but they're going to fight the monster a different way.
So this is again something I'm really interested in because I've been playing role-playing games a very long time, but I come from a board games background quite heavily as well. And there's quite a lot of discussion in kind of indie RPG circles. There's always an argument about whether people should have played and read a lot of games before they start designing. And I think Adam is a prime example of someone who's come into role-playing games without much of a background and started doing really interesting things. And I think yourself coming from board games, like there's a whole realm of design that we can draw from that is kind of ignored by a lot of people, right?
Absolutely. I mean, I think that's why when Adam recommended or pitched this idea of Wretched and Not So Alone, that it just clicked for me, because it adds kind of a gamification to this solo RPG that the board gamer in me is like, you're finally scratching that itch of like, how can I do a take that mechanic against somebody in my solo game? And so because I came from board games, Adam's pitch made total sense to me, and not only did it make sense, but it was really exciting to me.
I think there's also an element of it being a good way to introduce new players as well, because I know I've been trying to introduce my partner to role-playing games, and if your only experience is board games and you sit down at a table and there's no board to actually play a game with, it can be quite intimidating. And I think if we start stealing,
Oh, absolutely. It makes total sense. Like if I think oftentimes I hear people say or recommend to new role players to play games that are like very free form without a lot of rules or structures to them. But I think that actually can be overwhelming for people. Or like in your case, your partner coming from a place where they expect structure from something like a board game. And if you just say you can do whatever you want, that's actually horrifying to hear and overwhelming to hear, I think, for some people who are new to the hobby. So even like you said, having a mat or something like that you can point to and say, here's your structure, here's your box. I think that's extremely helpful for folks.
yeah, I think so. Like one of the things I keep coming back to me, and I don't want to make this about me because this is about you two. But one of the things I wanted when I wrote The Wretched, I've been playing a lot of solo journaling games because COVID had just started and I was at work and nobody else was in the office and I had nothing to do. And I was sitting playing them, And with a lot of them, because I hadn't really played them before, I did feel a little bit like, well, shit, what do I do? Like, I've got this prompt, but how do I react to it? Because it's so vague. And so one of the things I wanted to do with Wretched was to almost have it be like a baby's first journaling game. And I don't know if that came across or if that worked.
Well, it certainly worked for me. I'd never heard of journaling games until I found the Wretched, and now I'm madly in love with them. I've purchased loads and been scribbling in journals and doing YouTube videos, and yeah, I'm really enjoying them. So it was certainly a gentle introduction, although a terrifying one. It was a gentle one.
What other kind of games have you been getting into then off the back of that? What have you been playing?
So one of my favourites was Sigils in the Dark by Kurt Potts.
Yeah, that's a good game.
But kind of creative in a different way, because you're drawing these spells and sigils, but very much like Wretched, you're falling into very desperate ways, and things can start rapidly going wrong. You think you're doing very well, but you're not. You're becoming a very evil wizard, or I do. I think a lot of people do playing that game, but I got up to some horrible mischief, even though my original aims were quite good.
That's the kind of game that demands you buy a nice journal or notebook for as well.
Yes, something leather bound.
Yeah.
Well, that's the cool thing about it too. It's a solo game that then can create an artifact that can be used for another game. Like, you have now quite literally a spell book that you bring to another campaign and be like, you found this spell book. What are you going to do with it?
Yeah, I love that from solo journaling games, is that you can then take that away, and all that time that you've spent, like I don't know who it was on Twitter was saying that they were, or maybe it was on Reddit, that they were using the Wretched gameplay as logs for an abandoned ship they'd found in Stars Without Number or something, one of those sci-fi role-playing games, which I thought, that is such a good idea to do that. And the same with Sigils in the Dark, tear up, if you dare tear up that lovely leather journal that you've just filled out, and occasionally give those to your players in some kind of fantasy or horror role-playing game, that these are this evil wizard's out there, we need to track him down and put an end to his ways.
It's a fun way to do game prep as well, playing a game on your own rather than just sitting trying to make stuff up.
Yeah, it turns prep into lonely fun instead of just lonely work.
Instead of just lonely work.
I find it a fantastic way of extracting ideas out of my brain that I didn't even know. I think in some of the YouTube videos I've done playing Rigged, I've just, at the end, I say that has all come from just flipping two cards and the wonderful prompts from Spencer, but and what that can lead to, and the story that you go on wasn't there 5 minutes ago. And that's what I've loved about this Wretched system, is the journeys I've been on, the adventures I've been on, the characters I've discovered, the dangers I've been putting, which, well, they must be in my brain somewhere, and it's maybe the movies I've seen and the books I've read over the years, and they kind of all come to life thanks to these games and the prompts that are within them. Just to
echo that sentiment, it's good, like, improv practice too. Like, if you're a GM who's really worried about GMing and having to make things up or anything like that, this is a really low stakes way of getting world building, of background building, of improvisational storytelling, but you're by yourself, so the stakes are low, and with enough structure to the prompts, you're going to be amazed with the stuff that you can come up with. Like, I love every time I hear from Adam and he goes, I can't believe I came up with this with just this one car. And it's very cool.
So we talked about Slayers, which has done amazingly well on Kickstarter. So congratulations! I've backed that, and I can't wait for that. That's what you've got coming up. And
Thank you very much.
for those listening, Spencer is also, at the time we're recording this, is 4 days away from finding out whether he's won an Any.
Oh yeah.
Oh, that thing.
That little thing. So by the time this is heard by anybody, we will know whether we are actually talking to an Any winner or not. Let's hope we are. But
That's right.
But Adam, what you've actually written more Wretched and Alone games than me at this point. Are you working on anything else at the moment? Like, are you doing more Wretched and Alone stuff? Are you branching out to do something else? What have you got going on?
Yeah, I've got a couple of ideas. I'm about to go on holiday and have a rest, finally. But I'll be taking my notepad with me. I've got a few ideas. I'm currently playing a video game called Carrion. I don't know if you've seen that's been released. It's what they're calling a reverse horror. You play this creature in a laboratory underground, and you've escaped, and you've got to work your way out of this complex of tunnels and laboratories, just wreaking havoc on your way out. And that's really got me thinking about a game system. And it's kind of some fluffy ideas I've got around in my head, but I'm thinking a game where the players have to develop a vocabulary to talk to each other, and you maybe roll dice, and that's how many words you can use, and you've got to solve problems and communicate to begin with very limited words, and then that grows. I don't know how interesting that might be, but I just playing with this idea that you're all part of this same creature, but you've got to communicate and perhaps have different skills and abilities. So that's something I'm thinking about. That's the idea. And I want to. I'm thinking of hacking one of my own games, which I kind of said I do in it, which is a Goblin Treasure Map, which I designed in a way that it just didn't have to be played in a fantasy setting. So I'm going to be doing a pirate setting for that soon and a sci-fi setting.
Yeah, that was you made that for Treasure Jam, right?
That's right. Yeah, that was another one of your jams. Yeah. So
yeah.
Thanks again for inspiring me.
That was supposed to be me dipping my toe into running a game jam, and then Wretched Jam happened, and I kind of forgot all about Treasure Jam because I got completely overwhelmed with trying to run Wretched Jam, which is a shame because I really wanted to write something for that, but never mind, eh?
I mean, that just speaks to the success of Wretched Jam. I mean, it's a good problem to have, I guess. I guess one thing I want to mention, or I just want to echo the sentiments that Adam had earlier, which is that this system, Wretched and Alone, is a system that I really encourage people to just not only try playing, but just try writing. Like, you don't even have to write a whole thing, but just try writing like a couple prompts from a couple of different suits in any genre that you like. And I think you'll find not only will it come to you quickly, especially if you pick something you love, but that you will have a great deal of fun making it.
Yeah, and like, obviously people have slowed down on making the games now that the jam is over, but the SRD still exists and people can still absolutely make games, you know?
That's another thing I want to talk about. I want to see like more games that do SRD stuff, that just make like the game readily available and like just infinitely hackable for people.
Yeah.
Some games make that really easy, and then some games make that a hellscape to navigate.
I think we'll see more of that, you know, because obviously everyone's talking about Quest at the moment, and Quest have got a completely open license. And my favorite game.
Yeah, they go ahead.
Go on. No, go on.
Oh, I was just saying, yeah, exactly. They're making it as easy as possible for people to make stuff, which is very cool.
Yeah, and like my favorite game at the moment is Troika, and that's got an open license as well. And then the one that we modeled the SRD on largely was for the Queen, you know, to make Descended by the Queen game, Descended from the Queen games. I really think we'll start to see more of that. I hope so, at least, anyway.
That's oh, go ahead, Adam.
I was just going to say, as a newcomer, it's been such a a good time to stumble across it, really. And it sounds like that was the, I don't know if there's been past events like this, but it just seemed that I serendipitously stumbled across the Wretched and the Wretched jam just at the right time, and it's a good time to be involved in this. It's such a nice community on Twitter and on itch, very accepting, and everyone's really friendly and helpful, or certainly the people I've bumped into digitally. So
game jams happen quite often. If you go onto itch, there's a whole game jam section. Like there's a folklore jam happening at the moment as well, which is great. I'm definitely planning to write something for that.
I'll definitely check that out.
The one of the things that is tricky about jams on itch is because itch is also for computer games, so you have to find the tabletop jams inside there. But a friend of mine, I should share it with you all, in another Discord I'm in, has compiled all the physical jams and keeps a live document of it, so that you can find those TTRPG jams more easily.
Oh, that's cool. If that's a publicly available document, I could stick that in the show notes for this podcast, potentially.
Yeah, Max has it posted somewhere. I'll find it and then I'll shoot it your way.
Cool, that'd be great. Yeah, because I mean, I'm writing a game for Jared Sinclair's What's So Cool About Outer Space Jam at the moment as well. I don't know if Jared's running the jam or if it's just based on his game. But yeah, the jams are so much fun. Like it's like you said, it's just that whole community aspect and people supporting each other and all making games based around the same thing. It's just a huge amount of fun.
I think it's a good way of pushing you out of your comfort zone as well. Like the Goblin Treasure map was that I don't even know where that idea came from. It was just the prompt of the treasure jam, and I got thinking, well, you know, what ideas have I got for this? What could I possibly do? And out that popped. But I ran with it, and it's been a whole lot of fun and had some nice feedback. So yeah, definitely recommend people doing jams, and I'd definitely be doing some more. I think it's just that initial spark, that catalyst to get you thinking and writing, really, isn't it? It's just putting pen to paper and starting, and the ideas flow. Or certainly that's how it works for me.
Yeah, I definitely tend to be working on more things than I could possibly finish at any one time.
I mean, as a question for myself to more experienced gamers, how do you kind of manage that workflow? And so you've got all these ideas. Do you have to be quite disciplined, or how does that work out in reality?
I don't know. I go through bursts. So like Corvid Court, for example, was a game where I one day I said I need to make a game that has the concept of bursting into a cloud of crows in it. And then 2 days later, Corvid Court existed. I just made it. But then other games like Slayers has been like a year and a half in the making, and it really only exists because I just stole things from other projects that I had started and given up on. And I was like, I'm just going to Frankenstein glue these things together and see if it works. So I don't really, unfortunately, Adam, I don't have a good answer for that as well in terms of how to do this right.
Keep your notes then. That is the advice I got from that. They might come in useful later.
The big thing for me is that every project is different. So like the Wretched came together over the space of like 2 days. But then, similar to Spencer, I've got games that I've been working on for years at this point that may not even see the light of day. I don't know.
For me, before I got into RPG design, I was doing board game design, which is this incredibly long process because not only like you have to make things, you have to make prototypes to test it, and then you have to change those prototypes. And so the really long dev cycle of that was discouraging for me. So early on in my design time in RPG stuff, I specifically made things that I knew had short turnaround times on them because I didn't want to get stuck in that cycle again. And so that's something that I would recommend if you're new to it. That's why like a Wretched and Alone game is good, because you have a structure that you can follow. It's not overwhelming. Like writing prompts is just something you can do a couple of them over lunch every day.
And that's what game jams are great for as well, right? When you've got a big project slowly going on in the background, it's nice to get that dopamine hit of writing something in a week and putting it out.
I think it was the index cards jam was one of those quick dopamine hits. It was, I think, again, Spencer, your what's it called? The
bite-sized burglars.
Yeah, bite-sized burglars, and your the things that come out of your brain are amazing. That's just such a simple mechanic, and I was like, I need to make something of that. And that I read that, contacted you. I said, do you mind if I hack this? And within 10 minutes, I'd created something and put that on index card.
Yeah, giving me a play report like half an hour later.
So what was the game that you made off the back of that?
It was a zombie version of it, really. Spencer came up with this wonderful mechanic where you roll, and it was all about noise, wasn't it, Spencer? You probably explain it better than I can. Which reminded me of the board game Zombicide, where depending on how much noise you make, do you attract the attention of the zombies? And that made me think, well, I just want to hack this into a zombie version. And 10 minutes later, I released it, and like you say, got that wonderful buzz of creating something. It was good.
And that's called The Essentials Only, is that right?
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah, Adam turning that around as quickly as he did was like, so he gets the dopamine hit for making the thing, and then I get the dopamine hit because a thing that I made him want to make something. And so we're just this endless cycle that we feed into each other.
Right, so that's what happened when I launched Wretched Jam, and I sat there and thought maybe 2 or 3 people will make games, and an hour after we'd launched it, Adam popped into my DMs to say, here's Adrift.
I'm feeling a little bit of that right now with Slayers. I've had a lot of people reaching out and they're like, I want to make a class. I'm making these monsters. What about these tables? And I'm going, the game's not even out yet, and you're making things for it. It's a very fun feeling.
I'm not going to lie, but I want to make something for Slayers as well. It looks great.
Do it.
I will.
It's going to be completely open license. Make whatever you want. Sell whatever you want.
Awesome. I can't wait.
Yeah, I'm going to be all over that team.
So I guess if we just once again let everyone know who you are, where they can find you, and I'll pop links to everything in the show notes as well.
Sure. So I was Adam Boyes, and you can find me on itch at Boise RPG, and the same name over on Twitter.
And I'm Spencer Campbell. You can find me under Gila RPGs, GILA RPGs. You can find me on itch under that name, Twitter that name, and I have my own website, gilarpgs.com, where you'll see like my blog playthroughs of the Weaver rigged playthrough that Adam and I are in right now, and other stuff like that. And you can probably search for other things. I don't know. Google Gila RPGs. You'll probably find me somewhere.
Perfect. And I am Chris Bissette. You can find me on Twitter at Pangalactic. My blog is at loottheroom.uk, and you can find the Wretched Cast wherever you found it for you to be listening to it right now. Thank you for listening, I suppose. I'm so bad at this whole podcasting thing. I don't know how to introduce it. I don't know how to end it. Nailed it.